The sky turned black on a Tuesday morning. Park. Jian stood at the window of her office in Seoul and watched the massive ships block out the sun. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They hung in the air like mountains made of metal, and they made no sound at all. She had been the Chancellor of Earth for 3 years. She had dealt with wars, famines, and plagues. But nothing in her life had prepared her for this moment. Nothing could prepare anyone for this. The first message came 30 minutes later. It played on every screen, every phone, every device on the planet. The creature that spoke was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were completely black, like holes in its face. "We are the Velhari Dominion," the creature said. Its voice was cold and flat. "We have conquered 17 species across the stars. Your planet is now our property. Your people are now our labor force. You will not resist. You will not fight. You will obey." The message ended. Then it played again. And again. Admiral Yoon Do-hwan was on Earth's only deep space ship when the aliens arrived. The vessel was called Horizon, and it was humanity's greatest achievement. It had taken 50 years to build. It carried weapons that could destroy a small moon. Against the Velhari Armada, it was nothing. A toy. A joke. Do-hwan watched his sensors count the enemy ships. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. He had fought in 3 wars. He had killed men and watched friends die. But he had never felt fear like this. "Sir," his officer said quietly, "what do we do?" Do-hwan closed his eyes. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was 7 years old. She liked to draw pictures of spaceships. "We wait," he said, "and we watch." On Earth, Chancellor Jian made her decision. She called an emergency meeting of every world leader. They argued for 6 hours. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to hide. Some were so afraid they could barely speak. In the end, Jian stood before them all and told them the truth. "We cannot win this war," she said. "Not today. Not with what we have. If we fight now, they will kill us all. Every man, woman, and child on this planet. So we surrender?" Someone shouted. "We just give up." Jian looked at him with cold eyes. "We survive," she said. "That is not the same thing." The surrender happened 3 days later. Jian knelt in the main plaza of Seoul, in front of cameras that broadcast to the entire world. The Velhari commander stood over her, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. "You are wise to submit," the commander said. "Your species will serve the Dominion well." Jian said nothing. She kept her head down. But inside her mind, she was already planning. The collars came next. They were small metal rings that locked around the neck. Every human on Earth was forced to wear one. The Velhari said they were for identification. They said they were harmless. They lied. Kang Yoonji was an engineer. She was 32 years old, and she had spent her whole life building things, machines, computers, reactors. She understood technology better than almost anyone on Earth. When they put the collar on her neck, she felt something change in her mind. It was small at first, a slight fog in her thoughts, a tiny voice telling her to obey, to submit, to stop fighting. She pretended to listen, but she never stopped thinking. 3 months after the invasion, Yoonji was assigned to a work camp outside of Bizen. The Velhari were mining rare metals from the Korean mountains. They needed human workers to operate the machines. The work was hard, and many people died. But the camp also had a secret. Deep beneath the ground, in tunnels that the aliens did not know about, a group of humans were meeting in the dark. Yoonji found them by accident. She was looking for spare parts when she stumbled through a hidden door. Inside, she found 20 people sitting around a small fire. They all had the same look in their eyes. the look of people who had not given up. "Who are you?" she asked. A woman stepped forward. She was old, with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. But her voice was strong. "We are the ones who remember," the woman said. "We remember what it was like to be free. And we are going to fight." Yoonji should have reported them. The collar in her neck was telling her to report them. But she pushed that voice down, deep into the back of her mind. "Tell me how," she said. The woman smiled. "First, we need to understand these collars. We need to know how they work and how to stop them." Yoonji nodded slowly. This was something she could do. This was her purpose. "I will figure it out," she said. "Give me time." Far above the earth, Admiral Do-won had also made his choice. He had not surrendered. He had taken the horizon into the asteroid belt, hiding among the rocks and ice. The Valhari thought his ship had been destroyed. They were wrong. Every day, Do-won watched the alien ships come and go. He counted them. He studied their patterns. He learned their weaknesses. And every night, he sent coded messages to the resistance on Earth. "Be patient," he told them. "Prepare, build, learn. Our time will come." In her office in the work camp, Chancellor Jian received these messages. She read them by candlelight, then burned them so no one would find them. The Valhari thought they had broken humanity. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. The Kuiper Belt was a cold and empty place. Billions of ice rocks floated in the darkness, far from the warmth of the sun. Nothing lived there. Nothing moved. Until now. Admiral Yun Do-hwan watched the enemy fleet appear on his screens. 200 Valhari warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, like a wall of death crossing the void. His own fleet had 73 ships. Most of them were converted mining vessels with weapons welded onto their hulls. They looked ugly and broken. But they were all he had. "All ships, hold position," Do-hwan said into his communicator. "Wait for my signal." The Valhari commander sent a message. His face appeared on every human screen, gray and cold and full of contempt. "Surrender now," the alien said. "Drop your weapons and return to your stations. The Dominion will show mercy to those who obey." Do-won turned off the screen. He did not bother to reply. Captain Oh-my-Ray was flying a converted cargo ship called the Iron Wind. It had been a freighter once, carrying food and supplies between Earth and Mars. Now it carried something else. May-A was 34 years old. She had been a pilot before the invasion, flying passenger ships between the planets. The Valhari had killed her husband in the first week. They had taken her daughter to a work camp on Europa. She had not seen the child in 3 years. She had nothing left to lose. "All ships in Attack Group 7, follow me," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "We are going straight through their formation. Do not stop. Do not turn back." Her crew looked at her with wide eyes. They knew what she was asking. They knew they would probably die. "For Earth," one of them said quietly. "For Earth," the others repeated. The battle began at dawn, though there was no sun to mark the hour. The human fleet scattered into the asteroid field, using the rocks as cover. The Valhari ships followed, their weapons lighting up the darkness. The first human ship died in seconds. A Valhari cannon tore through its hull like paper. The crew had no time to scream, but the humans kept coming. They darted between the asteroids, firing their small weapons at the enemy's shields. They were like insects attacking a giant, but they did not stop. Captain Myray led her group toward the center of the Valhari formation. She broadcast a false surrender signal, making her ships look helpless and defeated. The Valhari commander laughed. "Foolish creatures. They think we will spare them." He ordered his ships to let the surrendering humans approach. He wanted them close, so they could see their defeat. before they died. This was his mistake. When Murray's group was in the middle of the enemy fleet, she gave the order, deploy the pods. Each of her ships launched dozens of small metal objects. They flew toward the Velhari vessels and attached to their hulls. Inside each pod was a nuclear weapon and a human volunteer. The explosions happened all at once. 16 Velhari warships died in a single moment. Their shields could not stop attacks from inside, that the enemy formation broke apart. For the first time in their long history, the Velhari experienced chaos. They did not know how to respond. Their commanders screamed orders that no one followed. Admiral Dowan saw his chance. All ships, attack now. Hit them while they are confused. The human fleet surged forward. They were still outnumbered, still outgunned. But they fought like demons. They rammed enemy ships with their own vessels. They fired every weapon they had until the barrels melted. Captain Murray's ship was burning. Her engines were dead. Half her crew was gone. But she was still flying, still fighting. "One more run," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "One more." She aimed her dying ship at the largest Velhari carrier. It was the enemy flagship, the heart of their fleet. If she could destroy it, the battle might turn. Her navigator, a young man named Yun Tai Wu, looked at her with steady eyes. "I am with you, Captain." The iron wind flew straight at the carrier. Velhari weapons tore holes in its hull. Fires spread through every deck. But Murray held the course taut in the last moment. She thought of her daughter. She hoped the girl would remember her mother as someone who fought. The explosion was visible from Earth. The battle lasted 6 days. 6 days of fire and death and desperate courage. When it was over, the human fleet had lost 47 ships. More than 5,000 people were dead, but the Velhari had lost everything. Their entire suppression fleet was gone. The last enemy ship, a damaged cruiser, tried to escape toward Jupiter. Admiral Dohan's forces caught it and tore it apart. Dohan stood on his bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his wounded crew. His ship was barely functional. Half its systems were dead. The air smelled like smoke and blood. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Shin Yuna, limped over to stand beside him. She had burns on her face and her arm was in a sling. "We won," she said. Her voice was full of wonder. "We actually won." Dohan did not smile. He was thinking about all the people who had died to make this victory possible. He was thinking about Captain Murray and her crew. "This is not the end," he said. "The Velhari will send more ships. They will come back stronger. We cannot just defend our system forever." Yuna looked at him. "What do you suggest?" Dohan turned to face the stars. Somewhere out there was the Velhari homeworld. Somewhere out there were billions of slaves waiting to be freed. "We take the war to them," he said. "We do not stop until every chain in the galaxy is broken." On Earth, Chancellor Jian received the news of the victory. She stood in her bunker and wept for the first time in 3 years. Tears ran down her face as she read the names of the dead. But when she was done crying, she called her generals together. "Start building more ships," she ordered. "Train more soldiers. We are going to war." The age of human slavery was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. The Velhari Dominion had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. They had conquered 17 species and hundreds of worlds. No one had ever attacked their core systems. No one had ever dared dot until humanity came. General Choi Hyerim led the first assault. She was 41 years old, with short gray hair and eyes like black ice. She had been a soldier all her life. The invasion had killed her entire family, but she did not cry. She did not mourn. She simply waited for the chance to fight. Now that chance had come. The target was a world called Morath Prime. It was a slave planet, home to millions of creatures called the Morath. They were small beings with blue skin and large eyes. The Velhari had conquered them 500 years ago and had used them as workers ever since. Hiram's fleet arrived without warning. The Velhari had never expected an attack this far from Earth. Their defenses were weak, their soldiers few. The battle for Morath Prime lasted 3 hours. Human soldiers dropped from the sky in metal pods. They fought through the alien cities with guns and grenades. They moved fast and hard, never stopping, never retreating. The Velhari garrison tried to fight back, but they had never faced enemies like this. Human soldiers did not follow predictable patterns. They changed their tactics every few minutes. They used tricks and traps and surprise attacks. By sunset, the planet was free. Hiram walked through the streets of the main city. Around her, Morath were coming out of their hiding places. They stared at the human soldiers with confusion and fear. One of them, an old female with wrinkled blue skin, approached Hiram slowly. She spoke in broken universal, the language the Velhari used. "Who are you?" the old Morath asked. "Why do you fight the masters?" Hiram looked down at the small creature. She thought about all the years this being had spent as a slave. All the pain, all the hopelessness. "We are humans," she said. "We were slaves too once, but we broke our chains. And now we are going to break yours. And now we are going to break yours." The old Morath began to cry, but there was something else in her eyes. Something that had been dead for a long time. Hope. The news of Morath Prime spread across the galaxy. Other slave species heard the stories. Humans had defeated the Velhari. Humans were setting people free. On a frozen world called Silka, the Silken people began to whisper. They were tall creatures with silver skin who had served the Dominion for 800 years. They had forgotten what freedom felt like, but they began to remember. On a desert planet deep in Velhari space, the Doral started to gather weapons. They were massive beings with skin like stone, bred by the aliens for heavy labor. They had been taught that resistance was impossible. Now they learned that it was not. Kang Yunji had cracked the Velhari communication network. Every message the aliens sent, every order from their commanders, every secret plan from their emperor, humanity could hear it all. "They are afraid," Yunji reported to Chancellor Jian. "The emperor is calling back all his fleets to protect the homeworld. He thinks we are going to attack." Jian smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Good. Let him be afraid. But she did not attack the homeworld. Not yet. Instead, she sent her fleets to every slave planet in the Dominion. One by one, they fell. World after world was set free. The liberated species joined the fight. Morath ships flew beside human vessels. Silken warriors marched with human soldiers. Doral workers built weapons and armor in massive factories. The galaxy was waking up. Admiral Dohan commanded the naval forces. He had learned much about the enemy in the past months. The Velhari were strong, but they were rigid. They followed rules and patterns. They could not adapt. Humans were different. Humans changed. They learned. They evolved. In one battle, Dohan's ships pretended to retreat. The Velhari chased them into an asteroid field, just as Dohan had planned. When the enemy was surrounded by rocks, human ships emerged from hiding places and attacked from all sides. The Velhari fleet was destroyed in minutes. In another battle, human soldiers captured a Velhari commander alive. They did not torture him. They did not kill him. They simply let him go. "Tell your emperor what you saw here," they said. "Tell him we are coming." The commander returned to his people with terror in his eyes. He told them about the human soldiers who fought without fear. He told them about the slave species rising up everywhere. He told them about the ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished like ghosts. The Velhari began to lose hope. The emperor made a broadcast to his people. His voice was angry and desperate. "The humans are a plague," he said. "They are a disease that must be destroyed. We must kill every single one of them. We must burn their worlds and scatter their ashes across the void." Chancellor Jian heard this message. She decided to send a reply. Her face appeared on every screen in the Dominion. In slave camps and military bases, in cities and ships, every Velhari saw the human leader speak. "You came to our world with chains," she said. Her voice was calm but filled with cold fire. "You thought you could tame us. You thought you could make us forget what we are. But we remember everything. Every collar, every whip, every child taken from their parents." She paused and looked directly at the screen. "We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we are coming for you." The message ended. Across the Dominion, slaves began to cheer. Guards began to tremble. The long night of Velhari rule was ending. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Dohuan gave the order. "Set course for Velor Prime. It is time to finish this." The final campaign had begun. Velhar Prime was a beautiful world. It had green forests and blue oceans and cities made of crystal that shone like stars. For 3,000 years, it had been the heart of the greatest empire in the galaxy. Now it was surrounded by fire. Admiral Yundowan's fleet hung in orbit like a ring of angry gods. Human ships, Morath cruisers, Silken destroyers, they're all battleships. They all came together for this final moment. The enslaved had become the liberators. The siege lasted 3 weeks. Velhari defense platforms fired constantly at the attackers. Their weapons were strong, their shields thick. But they could not stop everything. Human bombers slipped through the gaps and dropped their payloads on military targets. Silken fighters swarmed enemy ships like silver insects. Day by day, the defenses grew weaker. Day by day, the end grew closer. General Choi Hiram led the ground invasion. Her soldiers dropped from the sky onto the outskirts of the capital city. The fighting was brutal and bloody. The Velhari knew they were going to lose, but they fought anyway. Hiram respected that. She did not hate the common soldiers who fought for their home. She saved her hatred for the leaders who had built an empire on chains. Street by street, building by building, her forces pushed toward the center of the city. They moved carefully, trying not to kill civilians. They were not here to destroy. They were here to free. Lieutenant Beek Sun-ho was with the first unit to reach the Imperial Palace. He stood at the gates and looked up at the massive structure. It was made of white stone and gold, beautiful and terrible. 5 years ago, he had been a slave in a mining colony. He had worn a collar that whispered in his mind. He had thought he would die in the darkness. Far from home. Now he was here. Now he would finish what he had started. "Open the gates," he ordered. His soldiers used explosives to blow the doors apart. They rushed inside with weapons ready. But there were no guards. No soldiers. No one to stop them. They found the emperor in his throne room. He was sitting alone on a golden chair, surrounded by the bodies of his advisors. They had chosen to take their own lives rather than face capture. The room smelled like death. The emperor looked very old. His gray skin was wrinkled. His forearms hung limp at his sides. His black eyes stared at nothing. "So," he said as Sun-ho approached, "the slaves have come to kill the master." Sun-ho stopped a few meters away. His gun was pointed at the emperor's chest. "Kill you?" Sun-ho said. "No, that would be too easy." He lowered his weapon and stepped back. "You will stand trial for your crimes. Every species you enslaved will watch. Every world you conquered will see. And then you will spend the rest of your life in a cell, knowing that everything you built is gone." The emperor's eyes filled with rage. "Kill me. Give me a warrior's death. I demand it. Sunho turned and walked away. You do not get to make demands anymore. The surrender ceremony took place 1 week later. It was held in the main plaza of the capital city, the same place where Volhari emperors had celebrated their conquests for thousands of years. Now the plaza was filled with representatives from every species in the galaxy. Chancellor Park Jian stood at the center. She was wearing simple clothes, not the fancy robes of a ruler. She wanted the galaxy to see her as she truly was, a human who had survived. The emperor was brought before her in chains. He was forced to his knees on the hard stone ground. His advisors, those who had not killed themselves, knelt beside him. Millions watched across the galaxy, on Earth and Mars and Ganymede, on Marth Prime and Silka and 100 other worlds. Every being who had ever worn a collar saw this moment. Jian did not speak for a long time. She simply looked at the emperor, studying his face. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small metal object. It was a collar. Her collar. The one she had worn for 3 years. She held it up so everyone could see. We could put this on you, she said. Her voice was carried to every corner of the galaxy. We could do to your people what you did to ours. Every species here would support it. They would cheer. The emperor said nothing. His head hung low. But we will not. Jian dropped the collar on the ground and crushed it under her foot. The metal cracked and broke apart. Because that is not who we are. That is not who we choose to be. She stepped forward and looked down at the kneeling emperor. You will stand trial. Your empire will be broken apart. Your people will learn to live as equals among the species they once enslaved. And you will spend the rest of your very long life understanding exactly what you woke up when you came to Earth. She turned to face the crowd, the representatives of 100 species, of billions of beings who had once been slaves. The Valhari wanted to chain humanity, she said. Instead, they freed the galaxy. Let us make sure it stays that way. The crowd erupted in cheers. Humans embraced Morth. Silken sang their ancient songs of freedom. Doro stamped their heavy feet in celebration. Admiral Dowan watched from the edge of the plaza. Beside him stood Kan Yunji, General Choi Hai-rum, and Lieutenant Beek Sunho, the heroes of the revolution. What happens now? Yunji asked. Dowan looked up at the sky. The stars were bright and beautiful. For the first time in his life, they did not seem cold and distant. They seemed like home. Now we build something new, he said. Something better. A galaxy where no one wears chains. 50 years later, the Galactic Compact would span 200 species and 4,000 worlds. It would be founded on principles of equality and freedom. No slavery. No conquest. No masters and servants, and everywhere the story would be told. The story of a small blue planet that refused to break. The story of a species that turned chains into weapons and slaves into liberators. The Volhari had wanted to conquer humanity. Instead, the galaxy knelt not in submission, but in gratitude. 3 years passed under the gray sky. The Volhari had changed Earth. Factories rose from the ground like metal forests. Mines dug deep into the mountains. Ships carried human workers to the moon, to Mars, to the frozen moons of Jupiter. Everywhere humans went, they worked. They obeyed. They forgot, but not everyone forgot. Beek Sunho was 26 years old. He worked in a mining colony on Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons. The work was dangerous. The air was thin. The cold could kill a man in minutes if his suit failed. Sunho had worn his collar for 3 years. Every day, it whispered in his mind, obey, submit, do not fight. He had learned to ignore the whispers, but they never stopped. One morning, everything changed. Sunho was walking to his workstation when he heard a scream. It was a small sound, the voice of a child. He turned and saw a Valhari overseer standing over a young girl. The alien was hitting her with a metal rod. The girl was crying and trying to crawl away. "Work faster," the overseer said. His voice was flat and cold. Lazy creatures must be punished. Something broke inside Sunho's mind. It was like a wall crashing down. The caller screamed at him to stop, to turn away, to obey. But he did not listen. He walked toward the overseer. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard, he could feel it in his throat. The alien turned to look at him. "Return to your station, human." Sunho did not stop. He grabbed the overseer by its thin gray neck. The creature's eyes went wide with surprise. It had never seen a human disobey before. It did not know how to react. Sunho squeezed. He felt bones break under his fingers. The alien made a wet choking sound and then went still. He dropped the body and waited for the pain. The collar was supposed to punish him. It was supposed to send fire through his nerves until he screamed. But nothing happened. Sunho touched the metal ring around his neck. It was warm, but silent. Far away, in a hidden lab beneath the ruins of Bizon, Kang Yunji smiled. She had done it. After 3 years of secret work, she had finally cracked the collar's code. Her device sent out a special signal that blocked the collar's connection to the Valhari network. It did not remove the collar, but it made it useless. Tonight, she would test it on the whole colony. The signal went out at midnight. It spread across Ganymede like a wave, touching every collar on the moon. 4,000 humans felt the fog lift from their minds. They felt the chains fall away, and they were angry. The uprising took 11 minutes. Humans poured out of their barracks with tools and rocks and bare fists. The Valhari garrison had only 50 soldiers. They were not prepared for this. They had never seen humans fight. The aliens died screaming. When it was over, Sunho stood in the center of the colony, covered in gray blood. Around him, humans were laughing and crying and holding each other. Some of them had not felt real emotions in years. A young woman ran up to him. Her name was Lihana, and she had worked beside him for 2 years. She was crying. "What do we do now?" she asked. "They will send more ships. They will kill us all." Sunho looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Admiral Dohwan was waiting with his hidden fleet. Somewhere on Earth, Chancellor Jian was planning her next move. "We fight," Sunho said. "We keep fighting until we win or until we die." The news spread fast. Yunji's people had built a secret communication network that the Valhari could not detect. Within hours, every resistance cell on Earth knew what had happened on Ganymede. Humans had fought back. Humans had won. Chancellor Jian watched the reports come in. She was hiding in a bunker deep underground, surrounded by maps and computers and tired soldiers. She had not seen the sun in 2 years. "How many colonies can we reach with the signal?" she asked. Yunji's voice came through the speaker. "All of them. We can free every human in the solar system." Jian closed her eyes. She thought about all the people who had died in the past 3 years. She thought about the children who had been born into slavery, who had never known freedom. "Do it," she said. The liberation happened over 3 days. On Mars, workers rose up and captured the main Valhari base. On the moon, miners used explosives to destroy the alien ships in the landing zone. On Earth, millions of humans tore off their collars and burned them in the streets. The Valhari High Command received the reports with growing horror. This was impossible. Humans were broken. Humans were tame. Humans did not fight. The Emperor himself gave the order. Send a suppression fleet. 200 warships. Enough firepower to turn a planet into ash. "Kill them all," the Emperor said. "Leave nothing alive." Admiral Dohwan received a warning from his spies. He stood on the bridge of the horizon and watched his crew prepare for battle. They had spent 3 years building ships in secret. Mining vessels turned into carriers. Cargo haulers turned into bombers. It was not much, but it was all they had. "Sir," his officer said, "the enemy fleet is twice our size. Our ships are slower and weaker. The odds are very bad." Doan nodded. He knew the numbers. He knew they might all die, but he also knew something else. He knew what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. "Tell the fleet to move out," he said. "We meet them at the Kuiper Belt." The officer hesitated. "Any message for the crews?" Doan thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "Tell them this. The Velhari wanted to chain us. They forgot what we become when we are cornered. Today, we remind them." The human fleet moved into the darkness between the stars. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and far from home, but they were no longer afraid.